There are moments that remind people why many still miss Barack Obama's leadership. What began as a simple speech soon turned into a powerful lesson the Trumps would remember. Barron Trump tried to make light of Obama's words, but silence followed, and what came next became a reminder that grace often outshines arrogance. The day had arrived for one of Washington, D.C.'s most anticipated events, a major leadership forum attended by world leaders, top officials, and industry figures. But what made this gathering unique was the front row. 3 names that defined and divided politics: Barack Obama, Donald Trump, and Barron Trump. Each stood for something entirely different. Obama, calm and deliberate, symbolized diplomacy. Trump, bold and forceful, embodied power and confrontation. Barron, young and confident, was still finding his voice, but carried a name that drew attention everywhere. The hall buzzed with energy. Reporters whispered, photographers adjusted lenses, and guests exchanged quick glances toward the stage. Everyone sensed something notable was about to unfold. The backdrop glowed red, white, and blue. Flags framed the stage, and golden lights reflected across polished floors. The host, a well-known political commentator, approached the microphone with a cautious smile. "Ladies and gentlemen," he began, "please welcome former President Barack Obama." Applause filled the room. Some stood, others clapped quietly, but all focused forward. From the corner, Obama appeared, tall, composed, and unhurried. His presence spoke before he did. With a brief nod, he began, "Thank you. It's good to see so many leaders, thinkers, and young people ready to shape what's next." His tone was warm and conversational, more like a dialogue than a lecture, steady and genuine. He paused, scanning the room before continuing. "I want to talk about something simple, something we all feel but rarely discuss: the cost of living. The price of food, rent, fuel. It's affecting millions of hardworking families." The room fell silent. You could hear the faint hum of air conditioning. Obama continued, "Nearly 62% of Americans are struggling to keep up. Inflation isn't just a number. It's why parents skip dinner so their kids can eat. Why families hesitate before opening another bill." The audience listened closely, some nodding, others whispering quietly. Even his critics couldn't deny his words struck a chord. Obama's tone grew firmer. Leadership isn't about blaming who came before or waiting for who comes next. It's about standing up today and asking, what can we do together to fix this? Applause swept the room. Obama smiled lightly, took a sip of water, and went on, speaking of teamwork, accountability, and empathy. He didn't name anyone directly, yet the message clearly echoed through the current political climate. In the front row, Donald Trump sat motionless, arms crossed, expression firm. His silence spoke volumes. Next to him, Barron appeared calm but intrigued, his phone untouched. It was a rare moment where legacy met the present. Obama closed his remarks with a line that earned quiet admiration. "A great nation doesn't rise because one man wins. It rises when everyone stands together, even when it's difficult." After a pause, he added, "Leadership isn't about pointing fingers. It's about lifting hands." Applause followed, long, loud, sincere. Even political opponents couldn't resist joining in. Obama stepped back, nodded in appreciation, and stood composed as cameras flashed around him, the image of quiet strength. But beneath the applause, tension stirred. In the front row, Trump leaned toward his son, whispering something that made Barron smirk briefly. Trump's eyes stayed locked on Obama, his expression tightening. He tapped his finger lightly, waiting. Everyone knew he wouldn't remain silent for long. The host returned to the microphone, voice steady but strained. "Thank you, President Obama. That was powerful." The applause faded, replaced by a heavy stillness. Then, with a hint of anticipation, the host announced, "Next, we'll hear from President Donald J. Trump." Obama took his seat. Trump rose, buttoned his jacket, adjusted his tie, and smiled, not warmly, but with intent. It was the kind of smile that said, "Now it's my turn." Cameras shifted toward him as the room braced for what would follow. Reporters lifted their pens as Trump leaned toward the microphone. The lights reflected off the podium as he cleared his throat and began to speak, his tone sharp, steady, and unmistakably confident. Instantly, the atmosphere shifted. The applause was gone, the politeness faded, and something far more personal began to unfold. What had started as a formal event was about to become a pointed exchange between two presidents, and one son unaware of how far it would go. As the clapping faded, quiet conversation still circled around Obama's words, his calmness, compassion, and measured tone. But at the front, one man remained motionless, President Donald Trump. He sat still, eyes fixed on Obama, jaw tense, expression controlled, though his silence carried weight. He leaned toward Barron and whispered something the cameras missed. Barron gave a brief nod. Then Trump adjusted his tie, straightened his jacket, and rose. The host's slightly uneasy voice filled the hall. "Now, please welcome the President of the United States, Donald J. Trump." The applause this time was careful, polite, but restrained. Everyone understood the unpredictability that came when Trump had the microphone. He walked to the podium slowly, taking in the attention. Camera flashes lit up the room, each step echoing with authority. Trump paused, looking out at the audience, and then smiled. That familiar half grin, part charm, part challenge. "Well," he began, his tone edged with sarcasm. "That was quite a speech, wasn't it?" A few laughed quietly, others stayed silent. They knew what was coming. "Barack talks a lot about unity, about working together, about sharing the burden," Trump said, pausing slightly. "Sounds good, doesn't it?" His voice lowered, turning sharper. "But here's the truth. These problems didn't just appear overnight. They didn't start last year or the year before. They began when he was in charge." The room fell quiet. Trump wasn't easing in. He was diving straight into criticism. He gestured slightly toward the crowd for emphasis. "People can't afford groceries. Gas prices are soaring. Families are struggling. And the groundwork for that was built by Obama." A murmur moved through the audience. Reporters scribbled quickly. Cameras focused on Obama, whose face remained composed and unreadable. Trump continued, voice rising with intensity. "You talk about leadership, Barack, but real leadership means taking responsibility, and you never did. You talk about helping people, yet they're still hurting because of the problems you left behind." A few in the crowd clapped. Others stayed frozen, uncertain whether they were watching a speech or a confrontation. Obama remained still, hands folded, expression calm, almost deliberately so. Trump began to pace slightly behind the podium. Inflation, unemployment, border chaos, all of it traces back to failed decisions. "You talk about listening to the people. Well, I've been listening, and what they're saying is, they're tired." His last words echoed through the hall. The host shifted uneasily. Some guests whispered, sensing the rising tension. But Trump pressed on. "When I took office," he said firmly, "I promised to repair what was broken. And despite the resistance, despite every attempt to stop us, we did things differently, we told the truth, even when people didn't want to hear it." Trump turned slightly, glancing toward Obama. "We didn't stand here pretending everything was fine." His words carried a sharp edge of sarcasm. Obama's expression remained unchanged, yet the weight of the moment was clear. Every eye in the room shifted between the two men, one composed, the other intense. Trump leaned back toward the microphone. "See, Barack likes to sound thoughtful, but talk is cheap. While he talks, people struggle. While he talks, families lose homes. While he talks, America pays the price." The remark landed firmly. A few in the audience clapped, others murmured disapproval. The divide was obvious. Some admired Trump's bluntness, others felt uneasy with it. But Trump thrived in such moments. He smiled slightly. "You can give speeches all day," he continued. "You can sound polished, say the right words. But if you don't deliver results, those words mean nothing." The reaction grew louder this time. Trump appeared confident, almost triumphant. For a moment, it seemed he held full control of the room, but one person remained unmoved. Obama sat still, calm and steady. He met Trump's gaze, gave a single nod, and a faint, knowing smile, the kind that suggested experience rather than defiance. That subtle smile shifted the entire atmosphere. Cameras caught it instantly, projecting it onto the large screen above. The audience noticed, and so did Trump. His smile faded. For a brief second, the balance in the room changed. The applause quieted, replaced by murmurs. Trump took a step back, glanced at Barron, then back at the crowd. Suddenly, he turned the microphone toward his son. "Barron," he said evenly, "you've got something to say, don't you?" Barron looked momentarily surprised, uncertain, but his father's look made it clear this wasn't a request. It was direction. Barron leaned forward, adjusted the microphone, and cleared his throat. The audience fell completely silent. Even the photographers stopped. Long, still seconds passed. Then Barron began to speak. His voice was calm but firm, confident yet controlled. And in just a few seconds, he said something that would completely shift the tone of the evening. What came next wasn't just unexpected. It sparked the most defining moment of the event, leaving both Trump and his son momentarily silent. For those few seconds, the hall froze. Every gaze turned to Barron Trump. He sat upright, composed, but the pressure was visible. His father had just handed him the spotlight before a global audience, and everyone waited to see what he would do. Barron leaned slightly forward, took a measured breath, and began. The hall remained utterly quiet, no whispers, no movement. Then with a slight smile he spoke. "Well," he said, his tone steady with a trace of irony, "I suppose we can all appreciate a good speech about unity and compassion, especially from someone who spent years dividing the country." A few people gasped. Some clapped hesitantly. Obama didn't move. He sat still, focused entirely on Barron. The young Trump continued, his confidence growing. "My dad always says leadership is about truth. And sometimes the truth isn't pleasant. Sometimes it's about asking questions others are too afraid to ask." Then came the line that made the entire room fall silent. He said, "And some people still wonder if every president was truly born to lead this country." The words sent a quiet shock through the audience. It lasted only a few seconds, but the meaning was unmistakable. He was referring to the old claim about Obama's birth certificate, the same controversy that had once fueled years of political debate. And now, standing in front of Obama himself, Barron had brought it up again. Trump smiled faintly, appearing proud, almost satisfied. But the rest of the room didn't share that reaction. Some guests looked startled, others kept their eyes down, unwilling to show emotion. The host sat frozen, unsure whether to intervene. The entire atmosphere shifted. Obama remained perfectly still, his eyes fixed on Barron. No anger, no surprise, just quiet composure, the kind that suggested patience. Barron looked around, clearly aware of the attention. For a brief moment, he seemed pleased with himself. He had said something bold, something he knew his father would approve of. Leaning back slightly, he folded his hands and looked toward Trump, waiting for affirmation. Trump gave a short nod, like a commander signaling approval. But across the room, the unease deepened. Then Obama broke the silence, not with words, but with a small, calm smile. It wasn't mocking, nor defensive. It was that practiced expression of quiet understanding he was known for, one that made people wonder what he might say next. Somewhere in the back, a whisper rose. "He's not just going to let that go, is he?" But Obama stayed still. He took a slow breath, folded his arms, and waited. The pause alone carried power. It made the entire audience lean forward. Trump misread the calm as hesitation. He turned to the audience and said, "You see? That's what I mean. No answer, no defense, just words." He gave a short laugh. Barron smiled faintly again. But the moment of confidence didn't last. Behind that composure, Obama was ready to respond. After what felt like a long silence, Obama stood. He moved deliberately, without haste. No expression of anger, just steady focus. The hall went quiet once more. Even the production crew stopped moving. Obama faced the crowd, then looked directly at Barron. His voice was calm and clear. "I've been in politics a long time," he began. "I've heard a lot of things, some thoughtful, some less so. But here's what I've learned. Mocking someone's story never makes your own stronger." He turned briefly toward Trump. "And repeating the same false claims doesn't make them true." Then he faced Barron again, his tone still even but firm. "You see, son, what you just did, that's not confidence. That's imitation. You've taken your father's tone, but not his experience. And that's a dangerous mix." The tension in the air grew heavy. Each word landed with precision. Obama continued, his tone measured but sharper now. "Let me ask you something, Barron. You question where I come from, but do you even know where you come from? Are you Ivanka's son or Melania's?" The words hit the room like a jolt. Gasps spread across the hall. Cameras flashed. Heads turned. Barron froze, his expression blank. He looked toward his father, but Trump stayed silent. Obama didn't move. He simply stood there, giving the moment time to settle. Barron's mouth opened slightly, but no words came. Trump's jaw tightened, his calm slipping away. He leaned toward his son and muttered something under his breath, then raised his voice. "Go wait in the car." The audience reacted instantly. Barron hesitated, scanning the room before standing up. The sound of his footsteps echoed through the hall as he walked toward the exit. Obama didn't smirk or gloat. He remained composed, almost reflective. When Barron disappeared behind the curtain, the silence lingered. Trump's face had turned red with anger. He raised his hand toward the microphone, ready to respond, but Obama spoke first. "When families turn insults into habits," he said evenly, "they forget what respect looks like. And when respect disappears, so does leadership." The words were quiet, but decisive. Trump froze. The hall was completely still. Obama stepped back, letting his statement resonate. Then, with a calm nod, he returned to his seat. That brief exchange, 9 seconds of mockery followed by a display of restraint, became the defining moment of the night. Obama hadn't raised his voice or insulted anyone. He simply led by example. He quietly reminded everyone in that hall, and those who would later watch, that genuine power doesn't require noise. It only requires control. The silence after Barron's exit felt endless. You could almost feel the air shift in that grand hall, heavy with tension, surprise, and disbelief. President Trump sat still, his jaw tight, his eyes locked on Obama. For the first time that night, the balance in the room had shifted. Obama didn't rush to speak. He sat with his hands folded, letting the weight of the moment sink in. Then, in his steady, familiar voice, he began. "When I was president," he said, turning slightly toward the audience, "I faced criticism every single day. Some fair, some not. That's part of leadership. But here's what I learned. Not every insult deserves a response. Sometimes silence speaks louder than shouting." The audience listened intently. Trump, visibly tense, leaned forward, ready to cut in. Obama raised a hand gently, maintaining his composure. "But tonight," he continued, "we all just saw something important." His eyes moved toward the empty seat where Barron had been moments earlier. "When your son repeated a line meant to divide and question someone's place in this country, it became clear. This isn't just about politics anymore. It's about the lessons we pass on." The room grew still again. Obama's voice was calm but firm. "When a child mocks instead of asking questions, that's not entirely his fault. It reflects what he's been shown. That's the danger of unchecked anger. It spreads." Trump shifted uncomfortably. Obama continued, his tone deliberate. "I've seen this before. The personal attacks, the mockery, the distractions. It's the same playbook. It began with you, Mr. President. It passed through Ivanka, Melania, and now your son." A murmur moved through the crowd. Obama's gaze stayed fixed. "Families are meant to lift each other higher," he said quietly. "But what happens when the family itself becomes the stage for attack?" Trump didn't respond. The question lingered, sharp and unanswerable. Then Obama addressed the crowd again. "Jasmine Crockett once said something powerful," he continued. "Truth doesn't vanish just because someone refuses to see it." The audience stirred. Everyone knew her as the congresswoman who backed her words with proof, not noise. Obama's tone remained measured. She showed evidence, real evidence about behaviors in powerful families, evidence that made many uncomfortable. Trump's face hardened. Obama's voice softened slightly. "I don't deal in rumors," he said. "I deal in facts. And the truth is, when powerful men treat women, even their daughters, as objects of admiration or comparison, something is deeply wrong. Gasps spread through the hall. Obama looked out over the crowd, his tone calm but grave. In 2006, he said evenly, "You said, and I quote, 'If Ivanka weren't my daughter, perhaps I'd be dating her.' That's not leadership. That's not pride. That's a man mistaking affection for vanity." Trump's eyes widened, furious yet silent. Obama stepped back, giving the audience a moment to absorb his words. The hall was still, yet the silence carried weight, louder than any applause. "Leadership," Obama said finally, "isn't about mocking others. It's about guiding them. It's not tearing someone down. It's building your own legacy with integrity." He turned toward the crowd, his voice calm but warm, carrying both clarity and conviction. "When we raise our children, whether in the White House or a small apartment, we teach by example. If all they see is resentment, they'll grow to reflect it. If all they hear is anger, that's the only language they'll know." He paused, scanning the hall. "But if they witness respect, even for those who oppose you, they learn what true strength looks like." By now, even Trump's supporters sat in silence. It was no longer a confrontation. It was a lesson. Obama took a sip of water, set the glass down, and smiled faintly. "Tonight, I'm not here to win an argument," he said. "I'm here to remind everyone, especially the next generation, that leadership isn't about always being right. It's about being real." He looked directly at Trump. "Because when power turns into pride, and pride turns into cruelty, that's when a nation begins to lose its heart." At first, the audience clapped softly, uncertain, almost hesitant. Then the applause grew stronger, filling the room. Trump sat motionless, his grip tightening on the armrests, his face flushed with frustration. But he stayed quiet. Deep down, he knew that speaking now would only cost him the moment. Obama nodded slightly, stepped back from the podium, and walked off the stage. No dramatics, no shouting, just quiet authority. Cameras followed him as he left. Behind him, Trump remained seated, frozen. The image said more than words ever could. One man had argued. The other had led with composure intact. As Obama exited, the room fell into a stillness that felt almost unreal. No cheering, no chanting, just silence born from recognition. People understood they had witnessed something rare, a moment of truth. Obama didn't look back. His steps were measured, steady, each one echoing louder than applause. The cameras caught his calm expression, composed and dignified. He didn't wave, he didn't need to. His silence carried the message. Inside, Trump remained at the front, motionless. Barron hadn't returned. Supporters whispered among themselves, uneasy, but none spoke up. For once, Trump no longer controlled the room. Obama did, without even being there. It was power without noise, control without force, respect without demand. That's what made the moment so striking. Outside, the cool night air greeted Obama as he stepped through the doors. Reporters crowded around, microphones raised, waiting for a statement. Obama simply smiled, lifted a hand politely, and said, "Good evening, everyone. Let's all take a breath." Then he entered his car and left. No boasting, no remarks, just quiet grace. Back inside, the event hall remained hushed until the host finally spoke. "Ladies and gentlemen, please give a round of applause for President Obama." The audience rose to their feet. This time not from allegiance, but from respect. Even those who disagreed found themselves clapping. Trump glanced around, realizing the room had turned completely. He whispered something to the host, stood, and left the stage without a word. Later that night, clips of the exchange spread across the internet. But what people remembered wasn't the argument. It was how Obama ended it. Calmly, respectfully, without a single insult. In the days that followed, commentators, analysts, and ordinary citizens discussed that night. Some praised Obama's restraint. Others criticized Trump's silence. But nearly everyone agreed. It revealed something fundamental about character. Under the bright lights, it wasn't just two presidents people saw. It was a father, a son, and a leader, reminding everyone that true leadership is rooted in self-control. At a small community event days later, someone asked Obama about that evening. He smiled and replied, "Sometimes the strongest message comes from the quietest response." That line would echo for days, because it resonated. You see, Obama's message that night wasn't directed solely at the Trumps. It was meant for everyone watching. For parents raising children in a world overflowing with noise, for young people trying to find their voice amid chaos, and for leaders, both present and future, who often confuse control with compassion. He wanted people to understand that real strength isn't about overpowering others. It's about empathy. It's knowing when to stand firm and when to step back with composure. That's why, when he turned to Barron and asked, "Are you Ivanka's child or Melania's?" it wasn't meant to insult. It was meant to reflect. A reminder of what happens when imitation replaces individuality. Obama didn't need to embarrass anyone to make his point. He revealed the truth calmly, intentionally, and with full command of the room. As for Barron, reports said he remained quiet for days after the event. No public statements, no interviews. And perhaps that silence wasn't defeat, it was reflection. Because every young person makes mistakes. What truly matters is whether they learn from them. That was the deeper message Obama hoped everyone took away that evening. When life tests your patience, when someone mocks or challenges you, don't let anger take charge. Take a breath, respond with dignity, because the moment you let someone else dictate your emotions, you hand over your power. That's what made Obama's composure so impactful. While others argued, he listened. While others attacked, he taught. In doing so, he reminded everyone that real leadership doesn't demand attention. It earns respect through silence. As the lights dimmed in that Washington hall and the night came to a close, the image that lingered in people's minds wasn't the clash, it was the contrast. Trump's anger versus Obama's calm, Barron's mockery versus Obama's grace. In that quiet walk-off stage, one man hadn't just won a debate, he'd won the room, and that's the essence of the story. No matter who you are, where you come from, or what name you bear, respect never goes out of style, dignity is timeless. And more often than not, the calmest person in the room is the one truly in control. Obama's final act that night wasn't about revenge. It was a reminder that real leadership never needs to shout.